button, that means we should be
Plus
showing
my
up.
GM is calling right now, but
Oh, really? If you need to take it, go ahead. We can wait.
I'll call him back. It's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, what's going to happen?
Showing
my,
up.
GM.
All right, so we've got the show streaming. I'm going to go ahead and grab the link for it. I'm going to paste that in our description here, and then I'm going to grab the whole thing. I'm going to paste it in the chat. Okay, so if at any point you both want to grab that text that's in the chat window, paste it out onto your pages, you can. If you want to wait until the episode's over, you can do that too. I'm going to go ahead and paste that out onto our Facebook and LinkedIn pages now, but Ben, we are rolling. So
All right. Well, hello, and thank you again for tuning in. This is Virtual Coffee with Ben. My name is Ben Blackman. I'm the Director of Development for Ridge. It's Royal Innovation Design Group, a group of innovation consultants based in St. Petersburg, Florida. Before we get started today, of course, feel free to go to our YouTube channel and our Facebook page to like and subscribe for our content. This video series, as most of you probably know by now, is about how companies strategically plan, innovate, and create a strong culture for their employees. We have a very, very special episode today. I'm super excited. We have two guests on today, and they are both experts in the high performance world. We have Zach Weatherford's high performance contractor. He's working with a few Olympic hopefuls right now after previously working with the US Navy and the Brooklyn Nets. We also have Angus Mugford. He is the VP of High Performance for the Toronto Blue Jays after previously working at IMG Academy right here in Florida. And of course, we're joined by Joran, the Director of Creativity and Innovation for Ridge. He's helping to run the show. Good morning to you all. For starters, I actually understand that Angus and Zach, you both know each other. So I'm curious to know how and when that came about and about your separate journeys that both took you to similar roles in this emerging high performance world.
Zach, over to you if you want to launch your end of that. But yeah, it's a very small community, so it's fun to be reconnected today.
Yeah, it's great to see you, Angus. And I know it's been a few years that we've had a chance to chat and work together, such as this. So I'll kick off real quick. And Angus, I believe I met Angus through a mutual friend, a fellow psychologist of Angus's. And then I know I participated in one of your, which is where I met Michelle as well, in one of your symposiums down when you were still with IMG, which was just a great, innovative meeting of some great minds that came in from around the world. I think that was in 2015. And yeah, so my training background is in strength and conditioning. And yeah, we've followed some similar paths. Angus has worked with the military as well and what have you. So great to see you, Angus.
Yeah, you too. You too. That has been similar. Yeah, we were very fortunate to work with Michelle Royal and bringing some great minds together, trying to solve problems and challenges for, not just athletes, but, also military and staff too. I think we obviously don't just look at, whether it's soldiers, operators, or athletes as performers, but the staff around are really trying to find nourishment and growth for people. And so we got some amazing people together, and Michelle's able to help visualize some of the discussions and things that was really powerful. But yeah, certainly I think Zach and I have been on quite a journey, over these last 5 to 7 years of how to evolve and learn in a really dynamic landscape of performance and trying to get more out of people. So it's been great to continue to see each other over time with this.
So you mentioned that you both have a background in strength and conditioning. So for the average sports fan like me, how does high performance or human performance differ from what I would typically associate with a strength and conditioning coach or a team trainer? What is really different about what you guys are doing right now?
Well, I'll kick that off there. Angus is actually a psychologist, so he's a strength and conditioning for the mind, and myself, I was on the more the physical side. It has evolved tremendously over the last few decades, from my time when I first started off in the profession in the mid '90s, to where you have your typical kind of setup, which you just mentioned, Ben, of your athletic trainer, sports medicine, and your strength and conditioning coach. That's the system that I grew up in and learned from. But I was also introduced to a different way, and that being bringing in a variety of different services, very similar to what Angus had just mentioned. How can we look at the overall human and help to insert a variety of different tools for the individual and the team in order to increase and sustain performance. So it's not just on the physical side, obviously, and it's not just on the neck up or the mental side. It's a combination. It's a total body, total human, and sometimes there's different things that you implement that don't necessarily you would think that would introduce into an high performance or an increase in someone's vertical jump to helping them run faster. But if you can keep them on the court, on the field longer, on the pitch, then that's going to increase performance over time. Angus, what are your thoughts?
Well, very well said. I think one of the interesting things, and even Zach and I are great metaphors for it too, right? Because with his domain originally and training and pathway coming through more of a strength conditioning and physical route, mine has been more mental. And granted, I'm not a licensed psychologist, but my doctorate work and my training through ING Academy that you referenced earlier too is more like the strength coach for the mind on the mental performance. So looking at not just the individual, but also the systems and how we optimize that for improvement. But it is interesting because it's not about the mind, it's not about the body, it's about how do we put all of those things together for that individual. And so I think in the kinds of roles that Zach and I have been in over the years, it has been about getting a group of people with different expertise to help in that individual or groups of individuals to maximize their performance. So it's much more of a systems approach, and understanding that everyone's different, and how do we ultimately translate what makes that human good into a performance or into a job or into health, right? And so I think it's such a complex set of ecosystems essentially that it's not about any one thing. And so that's probably why you get people like Zach and I who have different specialties ending up in similar kinds of roles, who really about getting people together and focusing on how do we execute tasks, but about people and human behavior, which as we know is a complex thing. But it's funny now with COVID and all the economic repercussions I think that we're having from that. I think these kinds of roles are actually going to be even more important, because we need to be more thoughtful, more resourceful, and more specific about how we optimize, our performance. So it's fascinating times, and thank goodness we're learners too, because no one's got a script for this. We are trying to have to evolve and figure this out as we go too.
Yeah, things are always changing. So Zach, I was curious, with innovations in sports science, how does that aid the work that you're doing and how organizations approach the development of their players? Are there specific innovations recently that have really changed the game for you?
Well, I think that the sport that Angus works in currently, being baseball, really kind of paved the way for analytics in sport, and we've seen this over the last 20 plus years. And it certainly has evolved. Sports science, many of the different wearables and devices, the technology is now catching up to the idea of better monitoring of the athlete throughout not just their training, but also their, within their actual competition. And this just helps to give, to validate that gut feeling that the coaches are, have, that the sport performance and the performance staff have in regards to, the trending of the individual. And I think what Angus said earlier is very important. Although we both work in team sports and have worked in team sports, and what's the critical piece there is the individuals make up the team. And so as we're training and utilizing sports science, we're really focused on that individual and developing them and trying to find, you often see a various red flags from here to there, what have you, but it's not just one, it's a multitude of different things and trends over time, and utilizing that data to help to make better informed decisions.
That's great. Angus, something you touched on a moment ago was really interesting to me. You talked about how it's not just about the athletes that are playing on the field or on the court. The high performance principles that you guys are applying transcend the athletes and really apply to everyone within an organization. So I'm curious, within the Blue Jays organization, how are you applying those high performance principles to the executives and other people throughout the organization?
I think it's one of the things that was most compelling to me about joining the Blue Jays, and Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins specifically, with their view that this wasn't just about monitoring players or really even just about the players, right? While it is a person-centered, a player-centered piece, it was like, how could we become a high-performance organization, and take principles of learning and performance to every role. So it was very important to Mark specifically that every member of the organization, whether it was a security guard, ticket sales, or dietitian, or coach, that they felt connected. They felt that they could make an impact to the organization on whatever that role was. And I think for us, it was that paradigm shift of, it wasn't just a job, but you're a performer. So what you do matters, how you prepare, how you work and compete in your role, and how you recover and do that again. So I think people investing in themselves and investing in understanding their roles and how they can contribute and help others around them be better is a force multiplier. And for us, we're in the really unique kind of situation where we're in a division with 5 teams, but 2 of those teams have more money and resources than anybody else in the entire league. So with the Yankees and Red Sox, it makes that argument a lot easier that, hey, we're not going to outspend, and objectively, through analytics, we're not supposed to do better than 3rd in our own division, so we have to find ways to be better. And so that actually, I think, creates a competitive advantage in that we do have to learn and evolve and think about ourselves like that. And so actually, even as simple as taking the idea of having a player plan, for their development, and shifting that lens into, driving people and their own, performance at work, and, personally at home too, like, how do you want to evolve and actually help people through their own development plan, is, probably not new in the corporate world necessarily, but I think for the sports world, that is a little bit different, because we do pour so much resource into players, that really taking care of staff and making sure that we're all responsible for getting better and evolving is actually a bit of a paradigm shift. So that's been really fun.
Fascinating. Well, if you're just joining us, you're watching Virtual Coffee with Ben. I'm Ben Blackman, Director of Development with Ridge. I'm joined today by Zach Weatherford and Angus Mugford. They are both experts in the area of high performance when it comes to athletics. If you like what you're hearing, you want more of it, please go to our YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button. You can also go to our Facebook page or our website for more information on how we help companies innovate more efficiently. What are some of the big misconceptions that people have about athletic preparation or high performance? Are there certain areas that you guys see organizations getting it wrong or just lagging with the times?
I'll give a quick couple things. I think learning is is a big one, because I think I know in the sports world it's pretty unforgiving that the results matter, and so how we define failure is a big one. Like when I came in, there was a lot of work to do, but winning can cover up a lot, and I think losing exposes a lot, and so I think I'm always really impressed with teams that are winning but also want to continue to learn, or that they foster an environment where people are not afraid to make mistakes too. And it's an interesting parallel. It was something I learned from Zach and the community he was involved with before in the military, is that when the stakes are as high as life and death, that there's still a commitment to learn and evolve and be better and take positive risks. And I think when you can do that with the gravest of stakes, why can't we do that in sport? And so I think sometimes people are very risk averse in sport, where actually a commitment to learning and development is paramount. So I think getting that balance right is really important. And I think, again, when you're talking about culture and values, which I could talk for days about, is one of my favorite areas, is the difference between the values that might be written on the wall and the behaviors and actions that we do every day. And so I think you have to be really careful with how easy it is to undermine learning and being risk averse in a performance dominated industry. So I think that's something we've spent a lot of time really thinking a lot about. I'm curious to hear what your take is, Zach.
Yeah, no, Angus, I mean, that was well said, really was. And if anything, I think is trending in that direction is the learning and development of organizations, which you said in the last two questions of trying to develop the overall organization. And back to there are many aspects of the military that get it right when it comes to the operational standpoint of providing the right feedback to their personnel so they can make those corrections. And also just what Angus said, exposing to opportunities where if you do fail, it's in an environment where you can learn from it. And I think sport can definitely learn from that. Business can learn from those scenarios. I know there are many businesses out there that do push the limits and do fail and like, all right, hey, let's just pick it back up and just keep going and learn from those experiences. I'll also add that, when we talk about the athletic preparation and performance, especially I think in professional sports, there's this, that maybe this idea that, physically you just have to be dominant and you're always trying to, again, try to jump higher, run faster, and these things. And the reality is, in my opinion, professional opinion, it's staying healthy. It's staying within a good balance. It's being a good teammate. It's about continuity and consistency over a period of time to help to maintain that performance over the longevity of their career. So from the physical preparation perspective and even the mental piece, I think those are important to understand.
Along those lines of the mental piece, in recent years, there's been some really high profile athletes, whether it's Kevin Love or Michael Phelps. They've come forward with their personal struggles with their mental health, whether it be anxiety or depression. And the response has been overwhelmingly positive and supportive. I'm curious how you both address mental health with the athletes that you work with. And I'm curious if you think that the major sports leagues and the teams are doing enough to support players that are struggling with their mental health.
I can certainly kick that off, certainly near and dear to my heart. I think one of the things so we've been very fortunate and we've been able to double our performance staff since I got there. So literally we only had strength coaches and trainers and we had access to a couple part-time consultants on the mental health standpoint. And so now we have 6 full-time mental performance coaches who are integrated at each of our full season affiliates. And we have a more robust employee assistance program, but essentially mental health practitioners. And so the continuum of health is actually, mental health is a really important one. So we give the analogy of, the strength coach and the athletic trainer. They each perform really important roles, but on different ends of the health spectrum. So physically, the athletic trainer may be more and more of an emphasis around injury, whereas the strength coach is more of an emphasis around growth and improvement. But it's not about one or the other. It's actually the best teams are the ones who have strength coaches and trainers who really collaborate well and work across that continuum. And we take a similar approach on the mental side too. It's not all about fixing mental health problems, but it's also about maximizing their mental fitness, if you like, too. So that continuum is really important. It's something that I think we've done really well. But we also have, I think there's another element to it as well, and it's not just players. Again, kind of coming back to this element of staff, like baseball is brutal for the volume alone. I was pretty shocked coming into, IMG was a 365-year kind of operation, but seeing 162 games in a full season baseball piece was a fascinating thing in itself. Games essentially every day. The major league team are also traveling about 40,000 miles, and that's not to mention the other months of playoffs and spring training. And so the time away from families, the hours, all of the demands and pressures that go on around that too. I think we took a really serious look about the well-being that even being part of a team was actually, costing, whether that's the engagement, the autonomy control, the support time and things that we could provide, even things like better food, and I think there's something we call presenteeism, where, this hyper traditional model that you see in the business world too, of being the first in and the last out, which, is there are some good aspects to that in terms of work ethic, but it also can be really toxic when it comes to people looking after themselves and family dynamics. So really trying to address some of those aspects as well from a systemic standpoint, as well as providing actual resources and people that can help do that. And I think it's easy for organizations and teams to underestimate the impact of that. And I do think that was one of the things that when Zach and I first engaged around the military piece too, that obviously the gravity of some of that is even more significant. But I think the fact that they were really taking that part seriously, not just from the resources for operators and staff, but actually for families too, I think was fantastic, and probably launched my interest in creating that level of support around in a sports environment, as well as it's been starting to do in the military setting too.
Zach, anything to add to that?
Yeah, Angus, again, fantastic job there. I mean, you really have to give credit to. I'd like to give credit to those that are in the light, as far as Kevin Love, Michael Phelps, that stand up and say, "Hey, yeah, I may have how many gold medals and make how much as far as a salary per year, but I still have the same struggles of that everyone else has." And recognizing that and being open is just being vulnerable is really a great thing. And I to Angus's point, I saw an evolution happen in my time working for with the military, where it was started to become okay to start to talk about some of the the things and be able to go and see a psychologist, and again, opening themselves up and being vulnerable so that they can be healthier in life. overall is leading in the right direction. Still work that needs to be done. There's no question, but it's definitely going in the right direction.
That's such a good point, Zach. I think just the normalizing of mental health, and you're seeing it internationally too. Like I know Prince William in the United Kingdom, the UK have been doing really great effort. We've done a lot of work with New Zealand rugby too, and I think they've been exceptional in bringing the conversation to the forefront, and that it's not a sign of weakness to talk about it. It's just reality. So I think that's been a really cool evolution.
I agree. All right, before we wrap up, I got some quick fire ones for both of you guys. So quick answers here. I'd like to know from both your perspectives, if we're going to the future, 2025, 2030, what are the big changes that you see happening in regards to the high performance industry, or how organizations prioritize this work? Is it just more adoption, or are there breakthroughs that you see coming, Zach?
Yep. Better seat at the table. I think people coordinating, collaborating, like Angus had mentioned, and in an equal piece in the greater dynamics of the organization.
I would echo that. I think it is going to be different around COVID too, though. Like again, I think I am incredibly grateful for Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins with the Blue Jays and doing kind of what Zach's saying, like giving me a seat at the table essentially to influence not just player performance management, to actually look at the whole timeline, from talent ID acquisition and scouting all the way through development and to performance management. But I do think while we are very resource rich, like I said, we have up to about 60 performance staff, across our organization. But there's a lot of teams that are hitting really tough economic impact. And so we may see a slimming down of personnel and resources. But to Zach's point, because I think teams are becoming much more resource conscious, that we'll be more thoughtful about how we best allocate resources. And I think so the days of the owners just throwing money into free agency and lack of accountability. I mean, the number of organizations that are actually still paying off former staff or head coaches and people that they've let go, I mean, it's horrifying, right? So I think you will see organizations that are really trying to be smarter and more professional. And I think, that's part of the data revolution, right? That it's not just about the sports metrics, but the human metrics that kind of go around that. So I think that these roles will become more important, and how we allocate resources throughout an organization will be more and more important.
This is a fun one. I know you've both spent a lot of time in the sports world. I got to know if you have a favorite memory or a moment with an athlete you've worked with that you're most proud of throughout your career. Angus, we'll go ahead and give you the first shot at that one.
I guess I got a couple on different ends of the spectrum. One, certainly I'll never forget, just working a lot with tennis early on in my career, just seeing, I had a young Japanese player who spoke no English, 13 years old at the academy, and seeing him at the US Open, beating the number 4 player in the world, David Ferrer, and just a full stadium was such a surprise and just such a warm story for this kid, Kei Nishikori. He's ended up being a top 10 player. But I think even more rewarding in my evolution is actually just seeing the growth of our performance team, and just navigating even something as recently as when COVID hit and there was a lot of confusion and lack of certainty, and just seeing all of the hard work that we've done around building this values-based culture and seeing how our team responded and the empowerment and initiative that a group was able to take and do that together in a very quick window of time. That for me has been a highlight, because it's really actions, not words, to see people rally around that. So for me, that's from the one athlete kind of story to I think the real fulfillment of seeing how our team has grown and doing has been really cool.
Zach, what stands out for you?
Yeah, so I worked within the Olympic movement from 2000, 2010, and I think, when you say the Olympics, a lot of people are like, oh, okay, it just happens once every 4 years, and it definitely does not. And Olympic athletes are typically not paid very well, and just seeing the drive and the passion and the commitment that many of the athletes that I've been around, it's just really raw, and it's just fun to see how they develop and get better year after year after year, and just looking for whatever edge they can in a healthy way. And I think the other piece would be, I had a chance to work again in the Olympic movement. I worked in professional sports. I worked in college, but also worked within the military. And again, to Angus's point about having learning organizations, you're starting to see organizations come together and bring these different high performance components or high performance industries or sectors together and learn from each other. And that's been a really exciting piece that I've seen, especially during the last 3 months, where it's easy to jump on, relatively easy to jump on these Zoom calls and share ideas and thoughts, but just having those external pieces that come in to help to increase performance, whatever organization you're in, has been really exciting to see evolve.
That's great. Before we hop off, I want to let Joran ask a question. I know he's been wanting to hear from you guys. He's got something for you.
Yeah, I was writing up the show notes before we went on the stream, and I was editing the copy, and I saw that Ben had capitalized high performance, and I thought, well, that's not correct. And so I lowercased it, and then I went back to the top, and I saw that you have, both of you in your job titles have the words high performance. And I thought, oh, okay, it's a name, it's a real thing. So I went back and capitalized it. So two questions is, one, in your mind, you may be able to actually pinpoint this, but in your opinion, when did high performance become a proper noun, right? When did it become a thing in the field, in the industry? And then for those who are maybe wanting to know a little more or maybe enter this field themselves, do you have any mentors or gurus or fathers or grandfathers or even grandmothers in this field that you're looking up to and learning from?
I'll take a shot. So that's a great question. And I mean, I guess I can go back to early 2000s where I started learning more from outside the states and outside the kind of the system of college and professional sports that many people know in the United States, and learning from those from the UK, from Australia, from a wide variety of different places around the world, and understanding again, I think high performance is like, ultimately what we're trying to do is trying to push the envelope with athletes and teams to gain, that 1, 2, 3%, and then from a standpoint of, what are those things that are out there that people can go to? I mean, social media has really, I mean, there's obviously, some aspects of social media that aren't great, but there are some really good things of social media, Twitter I guess the good sides of Twitter, where you can find a lot of information. A lot of the research and the science that's out there is posted by those researchers that are supporting the applied side of sport, that you can download and gain. So, I mean, just everything's at your fingertips. I love LinkedIn, all the, various articles and posts that folks from a high performance, again, an industry that's all over the place. And as far as in just different sectors, that's at your fingertips there. So I think social media has done a really nice job in that department.
Yeah, no, from my perspective, it's an interesting thing about high performance, because I think if we were to go back and do it again, it would be, we might use a different term to help with some of the early transition, because it may sound quite condescending in some respects, right? But it is a very common term in largely Commonwealth countries. And one thing I'll just say about that I think is fascinating is that I think North America suffers from a scouting bias, and it's there's a lot to learn. I think the rest of the world from the incredible job that scouts do here. But by scouting bias, I'm really referring to just a wealth of talent. Like there's so much depth and talent. Where you go to a country like New Zealand, where there are 4 million people, yet they've dominated the world for 100 years. It's much more about um, development there. You know, there's a very small pool, so they have to maximize everything that they can about that. And I think that's where you've seen the explosion of sports science, applied sports science, take on a different meaning in places like the United Kingdom or Australia, New Zealand, and places in a different way than it has in the United States. It's just a different trajectory. So I think if you can balance, you know, scouting with performance development, you know, you have something really powerful, and that's what's exciting about doing it here. But it's a brand outside of North America that's now becoming a bit more more normalized. But as far as you know, incredible professionals, we're very lucky. It is this kind of small community because I think there are a lot of people out there from the Andy Walshes, you know, who did such a great job at Red Bull and came from Australia originally. Simon Timpson is another incredible professional at the United Kingdom. So if, look at the success that Great Britain's sport has had at the Olympics over the last 12 years. That is not an accident, and it is remarkable what they've accomplished. Simon Timpson was a big reason for that. Just went to Manchester City. And then there's a dear friend and mentor of mine, Dave Hadfield, who's actually an expert around coach development out of New Zealand Rugby that I've just learned an incredible amount from. And the leaders in performance community, I think, are another really good network across the world that been really fortunate to develop a lot of friends and people through too. That's worth checking out.
Well, I'm sure we could talk to you guys all day long. This has been fascinating, but I'm going to let you guys get back to the important work you got to do. I want to thank you both again so much for joining us today. We have Zach Weatherford again. Best of luck to your Olympic hopefuls that you're working with. I know that you got an extra year to prepare, so take advantage of that. We'll be watching intently to see the success that they have. And Angus with the Blue Jays. First of all, I'd like you to stop everything you're doing and get baseball back to work. I can speak for all the baseball fans out there. We're ready for more, and good luck to your Blue Jays if and when the season starts. That is, of course, unless you're playing the Kansas City Royals, my team. But other than that, good luck to the Blue Jays. And thanks to Joran again for helping to run the show. If you're interested in learning more about Ridge and what we're doing to help companies innovate, you can go to our website. That's ridge.com, RIDG.com. You can also, again, go to our YouTube page for more content and Facebook as well. And that's all for now. Hope to see you next time. Thanks again to Zach and to Angus. Take care, everybody.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Good to see you all. All right, see you, Zach. All right, guys.